All right, let's pray together. Dear God, we thank you for the time of sharing that we can have, and we're so grateful that Carol is doing better and with us. And God, we've talked about some heavy duty stuff that's just scary and sad. But as we start our study tonight, remind us that you are bigger, that you are greater, and that the end of the story has not been written. So guide us in this Bible study as we learn about Paul's story. Help us to listen. Help us to be encouraged. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Any questions or comments or things that you have lingered over since last week's study? I think Sue will not be with us tonight because her son and significant other from Korea are at her house today.
Oh, nice. That's
Nice.
nice. Does she listen to the recordings?
I don't know. I don't think she has, but I will let her know it's there. Yeah.
Mhm.
So we are, I asked questions. Anybody have a question or a comment from last week's study?
I was just going to say there were two things that really stuck with me last week. One was chapter 21 when we did 17 to 26, but this is my wording. Paul agrees to do ceremonial stuff to keep the peace. That tickled me when I read it, but I knew what it meant, and I thought about what it means in our lives. You know, what we do, not to keep the peace always, but just to keep a witness, you know, and to keep the peace so there's not discussion about tiny little things that are going to upset somebody. And then also when Gentiles have to step in and break up disagreements between Christians, it damages the witness. You know, and you talked about churches that eat pastors or something like that. And, you know, that's really hard when there's fighting in a church or there's disagreement that can't be settled or can't come to an understanding of some kind. That's hard. Thoughtful lesson last week.
Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to start right at the beginning of chapter 22. I think we started that, but we have to remember that Paul was in Jerusalem and the Jews were really upset with him, and he did everything he could. Carol just talked about how he did the ceremonial things and did just to get in their good graces, but now he's been taken into custody. Let's see, did he taken into custody then? Like, I was reading ahead, so I'm not. Yeah, so he was taken to keep him safe. The Roman guards took him away. So now he is he's talking now to the Jews again. So we're going to start with chapter the Jews that are gathered in Jerusalem, and these, remember, do we remember who was the agitator? Who were the agitators of this crowd?
Asian Jews.
The Asian Jews, the ones that had been following him, harassing him all the while he was on his missionary journey. All right, so now he's talking to, so he's got the Jews that are native in Jerusalem. And remember, Christianity started, I mean, it wasn't called Christians in Jerusalem, but it started in Jerusalem. All the first Christians were Jewish. And they met in Jerusalem, and then they begin sending people out from Jerusalem. Paul was originally sent out from the Jews in Jerusalem to end Christianity. So there's a couple of factions going on. So now there's Jews in Jerusalem. Probably some of them have soft hearts to this new Christianity, and some of them don't. So Paul's going to begin to address them. So here we are, chapter 22, 1 through 10. If someone would please read that.
I'll read.
Thanks, Tom.
Brothers and fathers, listen to me as I make my defense before you. When they heard him speaking to them in Hebrew, they became even quieter, and Paul went on. I am a Jew born in Tarsus in Cilicia, and brought up here in Jerusalem as a student of Gamaliel. I received strict instruction in the law of our ancestors and was just as dedicated to God as are all of you who are here today. I persecuted to the death the people who followed this way. I arrested men and women and threw them into prison. The high priest and the whole council can prove that I am telling the truth. I received from them letters written to fellow Jews in Damascus. So I went there to arrest these people and bring them back in chains to Jerusalem to be punished. As I was traveling and coming near Damascus about midday, a bright light from the sky flashed suddenly around me. I fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to me, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" "Who are you, Lord?" I asked. "I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you persecute." He said to me, "The men with me saw the light, but did not hear the voice of the one who was speaking to me." I asked, "What shall I do, Lord?" And the Lord said to me, "Get up and go into Damascus, and there you will be told everything that God has determined for you to do."
Okay. So Paul starts out with his pedigree, addressing them in Hebrew, what was, does everybody's version say Hebrew?
Mine says Aramaic.
Aramaic, okay, because I was going to say the language of the day, the Jewish day, was Aramaic. So he was talking to them in their native language. And I just tell you, if you've ever been someplace where somebody speaks a different language and you speak to a translator, and all of a sudden you start speaking in their language, every eye looks at you and they're just silent because they think that person really knows. So Paul is speaking to them in their language. What's his pedigree?
He was a student of Gamaliel.
Gamaliel.
And,
You remember that? You ever hear that name before?
the Gargamel, I want to call him, but yes.
Yes, that was the one. I remember that conversation. What can you say about him? Kathy's remembering.
I know he was very well respected, highly respected by everybody.
This is back with Peter in the temple. And they brought, I believe, I've got to check, but they brought him in and they're all saying, "We need to squish this." And he said, "Remember, we've had these uprisings before. And if we kill him, that would give power. But if we just let it go, if it's from God,
That's right.
if it's not from God, it's just going to end. But if it's from God, there's nothing that anyone can do to stop it." So he was a proponent of the law, but he was also very wise and highly respected among the Jews. So Paul was a student of Gamaliel. And what else was his pedigree? He was born in Tarsus, which was a really up and coming city. Let's see, it said it was one of the great ports of the Mediterranean, standing at the mouth of the river Cydnus and being in the terminus of a road that came all the way across Asia Minor. So this was an important city, and one that was, you would think, was kind of an up and coming city where they would be smart, have chances to be educated and know the ways of the world a little bit. Okay, so this is part of his pedigree. So what else do we got for him as his pedigree?
Well, mine says he was carefully trained in the Jewish laws and customs and became very zealous.
Okay. Very zealous. Very much preserving it.
But he wasn't,
Until-
right?
What?
He wasn't a priest,
He was not a priest.
right? Okay.
He was a Pharisee.
That's right. That's right. I mean, there was
Pharisee.
a-
Priest, you have to be born in the right family to be a priest.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
He was a Pharisee is something you can choose to be. So that was a political party, and he was very zealous until this huge dramatic thing happened. And it was Jesus himself talking to him. So he's giving this with a big, so let's see. So Paul is just identifying with the people and then saying, I was just like you. But then this happened. So let's go on. Let's read now 11 to 21 so we can hear the rest of his story as he retells it to us. 11 to 21.
I have the same version as he read from.
Go ahead.
My companions led me by the hand into Damascus because the brilliance of the light had blinded me. A man named Ananias came to see me. He was a devout observer of the law and highly respected by all the Jews living there. He stood beside me and said, Brother Saul, receive your sight. And at that very moment, I was able to see him. Then he said, the God of our fathers has chosen you to know his will and to see the righteous one and to hear words from his mouth. You will be his witness to all men of what you have seen and heard. And now what are you waiting for? Get up, be baptized, and wash your sins away, calling on his name. When I returned to Jerusalem and was praying at the temple, I fell into a trance and saw the Lord speaking. Quick, he said to me, leave Jerusalem immediately because they will not accept your testimony about me. Lord, I replied, these men know that I went from one synagogue to another to imprison and beat those who believed in you. And when the blood of your martyr Stephen was shed, I stood there giving my approval and guarding the clothes of those who were killing him. Then the Lord said to me, I will send you far away to the Gentiles.
All right.
Ah,
So remember, he's still talking to this Jewish crowd. So he talks about Ananias. What was Ananias's pedigree?
Ananias and Sephariah, what's her name? Ananias and
Wrong
Sapphira.
Ananias. Different Ananias.
Okay.
Wrong Ananias.
Ah,
Ananias and Sapphira were the ones that were
Okay.
struck dead because they lied. This is a different Ananias.
yeah, he couldn't be there. He's already dead. I forgot.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was
Okay.
deeply devoted to the law, it said, and well regarded by all the Jews.
This was Ananias was somebody who supported the law. And he was the one that received Paul into this new way. This person that supported the law. Paul keeps saying, see, I'm not against the law. I'm not against the law. And that's what, but then, he's working their way into the crowd. And then what does he say God told him?
Leave.
Leave. Because they're not going to receive your message. So you're sitting there and you're getting into the story going, okay, you're supporting the law. And then God says, you guys aren't going to listen to me anyway, so you got to leave. That's not real pleasant way to win people, is it? Paul's telling them the truth. God says, you're stubborn people and you're not going to listen. So you got to go. Well, what do you think the crowd's reaction is going to be to this?
They didn't know where he was going, did they?
Well, but God said, I'm going to take you far away to the Gentiles.
Oh, to the Gentiles.
To the
So
Gentiles.
I would be a little bit put off if I was hearing him say that. If I were in that crowd, I'd be
Probably just hearing those word Gentiles, like, got him up in arms, probably.
Yeah, I'm going to take you away from these Jews who, really what he's saying is they're too stubborn. They're not good enough to hear my news. I'm going to take you to somebody else. No. So we got a pretty good idea. I think we're going to find out that just exactly what happened after this. So Paul tells them this big, strong conversion story. And now at the end, he just goes, another stick it to him. So let's go 22 to 30. Dottie, you read?
Okay. The people listened to Paul until he said this, but then they started shouting at the top of their voices, "Away with him! Kill him! He's not fit to live!" They were screaming, waving their clothes, and throwing dust up in the air. The Roman commander ordered his men to take Paul into the fort, and he told them to whip him in order to find out why the Jews were screaming like this against him. But when they had tied him up to be whipped, Paul said to the officer standing there, "Is it lawful for you to whip a Roman citizen who hasn't even been tried for any crime?" When the officer heard this, he went to the commander and asked him, "What are you doing? That man is a Roman citizen." So the commander went to Paul and asked him, "Tell me, are you a Roman citizen?" "Yes," answered Paul. The commander said, "I became one by paying a large amount of money." "But I am one by birth," Paul answered. At once the men who were going to question Paul drew back from him, and the commander was frightened when he realized that Paul was a Roman citizen and that he had put him in chains.
Keep going a little more.
The commander wanted to find out for sure what the Jews were accusing Paul of. So the next day he had Paul's chains taken off and ordered the chief priests and the whole council to meet. Then he took Paul and made him stand before them.
Okay. All right. A little twist of the plot now.
Ooh.
All right. So what were the Jews doing at the, so just as we suspected, when Paul says, "And God took me away from you," they got really mad. What were they doing to show their disgust?
Oh. I wanted to ask you
Throwing-
about that. They were screaming, waving their clothes and throwing dust in the air. What's the significance of the dust in the air? Is there one?
It was part of that culture.
Okay.
This is what it said. It said, they took the common way of showing their disapproval. They shouted and waved their garments and threw dust in the air in the fashion of the East, is what my commentary says.
Because I kind of tied that back to, Jesus telling his disciples that when you leave, if you're not accepted where you are, then brush the dust off your sandals and move on. And I didn't know whether, I just thought that was interesting, that the connection of the dust, if there was connection. Anyway, okay. It's just a
Okay.
common practice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So now why was the Roman officers going to beat him?
They figured he stirred up the crowd for some reason and they didn't know why.
Why didn't they know why?
They didn't really get involved in, did they? I mean, weren't they? It was okay for people to do whatever they wanted to do as long as they followed the Roman laws, or
Yeah, but there's a reason why they didn't know what Paul was saying. Very simple answer.
they weren't Jews.
Oh, no, he was speaking in the
The
language.
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 He was speaking in Aramaic.
Oh, so
They
smart.
didn't understand the language. They had no idea what he said.
Ah,
Okay.
So they wanted to know. Maybe he was, calling them terrible names, or so they thought if they beat him, he's going to tell them what's really going on. Okay. So now tell me this thing about what happened then at that point when they're getting ready to beat him.
That's when he told him he was a Roman citizen.
Oh. Now, it's not quite like being an American citizen. I mean, you're born in the United States. Well, I suppose it would be if you're trying to get through customs someplace. And yeah, I'm a natural born citizen, but Roman citizenship was hard to come by. And I'm not sure what it was that Paul was allowed to be born a Roman citizen, whether it was his family line or what happened, but he had way bigger privileges over anyone else. And there is no way they could even handcuff him, or like chains on him if they didn't have a reasonable cause.
And they'd already done that.
And they'd already done that. So what would it have? What was the possible outcome for the commander if he had beaten this Roman citizen without a cause?
Well, and especially since he said he became a citizen by paying a large amount of money. So he wasn't even a natural born citizen.
He was not. He was not in the right family.
And he was way under, I mean, when you said Paul had all these privileges higher than someone who had bought their citizenship,
Mm-hmm.
and he really, I think of military command, he outranked him. So
Way big time.
way big time.
So what would happen to this commander if he beat Paul?
Well, he'd lose his job, I would think.
Lose his
Probably be
job and
killed.
might be
He'd
highly
been killed.
possible that he might lose his life too.
Okay.
This was a big deal. You had rights as a Roman. You just cannot go willy-nilly beating somebody. Uh-oh. So
So how would they have known that he was? Could he have just been lying?
they wouldn't have. They wouldn't. He was speaking Aramaic. They wouldn't have had any reason to believe it. But Paul, as soon as he said that, woo! It's kind of. I was watching a show the other night about somebody who was an ambassador. It was a crime drama. I love to watch crime drama things. Not the real stuff, but the fake stuff. Anyways, and there's that immunity. The police couldn't even question this guy or do anything because he was an ambassador and had international immunity to anything. And as soon as they say it, then the police have to just back away. Same thing here. They're going, oh boy, now this is not a good situation. So they've got this rebel rouser, this route winding up the crowd, and they can't do anything to him because he's a Roman citizen. So what are they going to do to get to the bottom of the problem?
Well, they put Paul in front of the crowd. I guess they figured the crowd could take care of it. If
Okay,
it was
not
a
the crowd, not the crowd.
The chief, the council, right? And
Oh,
The
the high council.
Sanhedrin and the priests.
Which was what, Dan?
He's got to face the priests and the Sanhedrin.
Right. This the high council. The ones. This is one. I mean, there's a king in Israel, but this is where the power is. I mean, you've got the Roman citizen, the Romans that have the ultimate power. But who was it that tried Jesus before he was crucified?
Pilate.
Well, not Roman.
Herod. No.
But while Herod looked at it,
Caiaphas.
it was the Sanhedrin.
Oh, I'm just
It was
throwing.
the Sanhedrin. Yeah, Herod, they took Jesus to Herod, who was the king, but it was the Sanhedrin and the high priest that they went to
Okay.
first. The high priest, the Sanhedrin. So this is the ultimate power of Jews, is that Sanhedrin. So they thought,
Okay.
we got to cut this right off. We got to go right to the top. Just nip this in the bud, get rid of it. So he's going to go to the Sanhedrin. Do you think those Roman guards slept very well that night?
They were slept with one eye open, as my mother would say.
All right, so let's go. We got time to keep going. Let's go chapter 23 now and go 1 through 10.
I can read.
Okay.
And Paul, looking intently at the council, said, Brethren, I have lived my life with a perfectly good conscience before God up to this day. And the high priest Ananias commanded those standing beside him and strike him on the mouth. Strike him.
Okay, this is also a different, this is, point out, this is a different Ananias.
Then Paul said to him, God is going to strike you, you whitewashed wall. And do you sit to try me according to the law, and in violation of the law, order me to be struck. But the bystanders said, do you revile God's high priest? And Paul said, I was not aware, brethren, that he was high priest, for it is written, you shall not speak evil of a ruler of your people. But perceiving that one party with Sadducees and the other Pharisees, Paul began crying out in the council, brethren, I am a Pharisee, a son of Pharisees. I am on trial for the hope and resurrection of the dead. And as he said this, there arose a dissension between the Pharisees and Sadducees, and the assembly was divided. For the Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, nor an angel, nor a spirit, but the Pharisees acknowledge them all. And there arose a great uproar, and some of the scribes of the Pharisaic party stood up and began to argue heatedly, saying, we find nothing wrong with this man. Suppose a spirit or an angel has spoken to him. And did you want me to read 10?
Yeah.
And as a great dissension was developing, the commander was afraid Paul would be torn to pieces by them, and ordered the troops to go down and take him away from them by force and bring him into the barracks. Wow.
Woo! What a story.
Mm.
Now, so what happens here? Paul is so smart. Paul is a smart guy. And so what happens? Unpack it. The first thing that happens is what?
They said to hit him
Yeah,
in the mouth.
right. Because they think, how does he have a right to say, I have completely pure conscience up to this date? Pure conscience. And they're saying this guy is not. The high priest then says, tell this guy to shut up. Basically what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then Paul's arguing back with the law. You're judging me for the law, and then you're breaking the law. You can't hit someone like that in the law.
Hey, would you, what was that word you used? Whitewash or something?
Whitewashed wall.
Whitewashed wall. Yeah.
Okay, because yeah, mine's different. So it's,
Yep. Now this commentary says, when the high priest ordered Paul to be struck, he himself was transgressing the law, which says, he who strikes the cheek of an Israelite strikes as if it were the God of glory. So Paul rounds about him, calling him a whitewashed wall. To touch a dead body was for an Israelite and to incur ceremonial defilement. It was therefore the custom to whitewash tombs so that none might be touched by mistake. So Paul, in effect, is calling the high priest a whitewashed tomb, just like Jesus did.
oh,
So you're a whitewashed, looking at a whitewashed wall. Is it you are a whitewashed wall? Yeah, you whitewashed wall, saying you're dead on the inside and you're all dressed up on the outside. Jesus said the same thing.
interesting. Okay, because mine says God will slap you, you corrupt hypocrite. Yeah.
So there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then they said, "How dare you talk to the high priest like that?" Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know he was the high priest. I wouldn't have talked to him like that, because it's. And then Paul starts quoting the law back to them to prove that he's supporting the law, because it is written. All right, now here's where Paul the smart. I mean, Paul is not somebody who just learns to say politically correct things well. Paul just says what's out there. All right. But now what does he do as he's looking at this crowd? He knows he's in trouble. Who's sitting there in the Sanhedrin?
It's almost as if he was trying to deflect things off of him to get the Sadducees and the Pharisees arguing against each other.
Miss them fighting with each other.
Jesus did the same thing. got them arguing over the resurrection of the dead, because if you'll remember, and I'll say this again because you'll remember it eventually, the Pharisees believed in life after death and a resurrection of the dead, and the Sadducees didn't. That's why they were Sadducees. Yeah, right. We said that
You got
before. Okay. So Paul says, I'm a Pharisee and I'm on trial for the hope of the resurrection of the dead. Oh, he was smart. And all of a sudden, he's not the center of attention. What is?
The Sadducees and the Pharisees.
The resurrection of the dead problem that's always a problem for him. If you watched, I'm sure you watched Fiddler on the Roof. Yep. And there's a scene at the wedding when Tevye says, and this guy, and he gave me such a good gift. And then he said, and which was the cow? Well, the cow was diseased, and there was this old fight. They got this argument going again, back and forth. So Paul deflects the whole crowd into this intentionally, and gets half of the Sanhedrin on his side, because even though none of them liked him, they are going to defend someone that believes in the resurrection of the dead against anything. And suddenly Paul is their hero. And this terrible fight ensues now. This is where emotions, can you imagine how high the emotions are in that room?
Oh dear. Yeah.
And what's going on? And they're already all upset about Paul. And then he divides them. And you know that in psychological terms, love and hate are really, really close emotions, where if you love and liking someone are really pretty far apart. So all of a sudden, these people that all hated Paul, at that moment, all of a sudden, the Pharisees are just totally loving him. And the Sadducees are even hating him more. And then they're actually, that love-hate that they have, that hate relationship between each other is just boom, exploding. So now what happens?
They had to get him out of there.
Yeah. The Romans going, oh man. And did you see what the Pharisees said? What if a spirit or angel has spoken to him?
Mm-hmm.
The Sadducees don't believe in spirits or angels, so they're just digging at him and digging at him. It's this terrible scene, and really, they might truly tear Paul apart. So in steps the Gentile, the non-believers, to pull Paul out of there again. Would Paul be a good one to work in when there's controversy? Would he be somebody good to walk into a place and calm people on both sides down?
No.
No, he'd stir them up.
He'd stir them up. He wouldn't say the right words. He would just stir everything up. That's not his gift. A mediator. He would not be a good mediator. So, we look up at people's gifts. That's not a gift that Paul has. Mm-hmm. Now, what if Barnabas had been on trial here?
Yeah.
Perfectly calm. Everybody would have walked away. Best buddies at the end. Maybe Paul needed to call Barnabas in on this one. Okay, I think we can. Let's go the next round of it and go through 11 through 24.
I can do that. That night the Lord appeared to Paul and said, "Be encouraged, Paul. Just as you have been a witness to me here in Jerusalem, you must preach the good news in Rome as well." The next morning, a group of Jews got together and bound themselves with an oath not to eat or drink until they had killed Paul. There were more than 40 of them in the conspiracy. They went to the leading priests and elders and told them, "We have bound ourselves with an oath to eat nothing until we have killed Paul. So you and the high council should ask the commander to bring Paul back to the council again. Pretend you want to examine his case more fully. We will kill him on the way." But Paul's nephew, his sister's son, heard of the plan and went to the fortress and told Paul. Paul called for one of the Roman officers and said, "Take this young man to the commander. He has something important to tell him." So the officer did, explaining, "Paul, the prisoner, called me over and asked me to bring this young man to you because he has something to tell you." The commander took his hand, led him aside, and asked, "What is it you want to tell me?" Paul's nephew told him, "Some Jews are going to ask you to bring Paul before the high council tomorrow, pretending they want to get some more information. But don't do it. There are more than 40 men hiding along the way, ready to ambush him. They have vowed not to eat or drink anything until they have killed him. They are ready now, just waiting for your consent. Don't let anyone know you told me this," the commander warned the young man. Then the commander called 2 of his officers and ordered, "Get 200 soldiers ready to leave for Caesarea at 9 o'clock tonight. Also take 200 spearmen and 70 mounted troops. Provide horses for Paul to ride and get him safely to Governor Felix."
Okay. Wow. Paul is
Good thing that nephew heard that.
yeah, pretty big guy. They're gonna have to do, because now they know he's a Roman citizen. And he's not just like your local yokel that's, oh, another one dead. Oh well. No, this is a Roman citizen. And there's a plot to kill him. And this is a serious plot. So this is what the commentary says. When a man took such a vow, he said, "May God curse me if I fail to do this." So they're taking a vow so seriously that if they don't do it, they're asking God to curse them. They are going to kill Paul. They're just, it's there. It's a terrible plot. And there's nothing the Roman soldiers are going to be able to do when they hear what a big plot this is. So who's Felix? We haven't heard about Felix yet.
Yeah.
Governor Felix.
The governor.
Okay, he's the governor. Okay, it's in Caesarea. So we know where Caesarea is. Anybody got a map? Want to look that one up?
You had one there. Somewhere nearby.
Somebody must have one in there.
In Judea, it's
Okay.
not far from Jerusalem, is it? It looks like it's not far. It's on the Mediterranean Sea.
Just
Okay,
north
it's
of
on the coast, so it's a
Jerusalem on the
little
sea.
drive. That was a city built by Caesar. It was a new
Yeah.
city. It's a Roman city in Jerusalem, but that's where the governor is. This is the Roman seat of Israel. So what are they going to do to make sure that Paul gets to the Roman governor safely?
Surround him with a lot of men.
Let's see, I'm counting 200, 400, 470.
Yeah.
Wow. They said, we got to get this guy there safely. Sheesh.
Yeah.
Paul
That
really
should
stirred
do
him up. Huh?
That should do it.
That should do it. And provide baggage for the animals and make sure Paul's got a horse and get him through to Felix. And this also tells us how afraid they are of this plot. Because when the nephew told them they have vowed not to eat or drink, they kind of got into the mind of the Jewish people and knew they're going to stop at nothing to kill this guy. We got to get him out. And when are they leaving?
At 9 o'clock that night.
Right.
I got 9 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, to go to Caesarea at 9 tonight. Huh.
Leave by 9 o'clock tonight.
Hmm. That's interesting.
Said 9 o'clock.
Get ready to soldier, then go to Caesarea at about 9 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, mine says tonight too.
Well,
Who's wrong?
mine might be
Leave
wrong.
by 9 o'clock tonight.
Well, sometime that
What is
day,
it?
they were gonna get him.
Yeah, it
moved.
sounds like we're getting him out of here
3.
now. Call everybody in as soon as we can get this assembled. This is emergency. We got to get him out of here now.
The third hour of the night.
The third hour of the night. Okay, so it's
Yeah.
dark. They doesn't even care. They got to get him out of there.
I keep
All
just
right.
saying.
This story is too. We got to read to the end of the chapter. I think.
Yeah.
Okay, we're too much in the middle of it. All right. To the end of the chapter, and then we'll leave it there
Okay, starting where?
at 25.
To 35. I can do that.
Okay.
All right, I think. I'll try. Then the commander wrote a letter that went like this. Claudius Lysias to His Excellency Governor Felix, greetings. The Jews seized this man and were about to kill him. I learned that he is a Roman citizen, so I went with my soldiers and rescued him. I wanted to know what they were accusing him of, so I took him down to their council. I found out that he'd not done a thing for which he deserved to die or be put in prison. The accusation against him had to do with questions about their own law. And when I was informed that there was a plot against him, at once I decided to send him to you. I've told his accusers to make their charges against him before you. The soldiers carried out their orders. They got Paul and took him that night as far as Antipatris. The next day, the foot soldiers returned to the fort and left the horsemen to go on with him. They took him to Caesarea, delivered the letter to the governor, and turned Paul over to him. The governor read the letter and asked Paul what province he was from. When he found out that he was from Cilicia, he said, I will hear you when your accusers arrive. Then he gave orders for Paul to be kept under guard in the governor's headquarters.
Phew.
Wow.
So he's there.
Got there safely.
He got there safely. So they had these 470 soldiers following, at least to get him out of Jerusalem, safely out. And then they let the 70 cavalry to continue him on. So they got him out of there as quick as they could. Brought in under the cover of darkness.
Mhm.
At night.
Yeah, it said at night here, so that must have been a misprint someplace. Okay. So let's see. The governor to whom Paul was taken was Felix. 5 years he had governed Judea, and for 2 years he had been stationed in Samaria. He had still 2 years to go before being dismissed from his post. He had begun life as a slave. His brother Paulus was a favorite of Nero. Through the influence of Paulus, Felix had risen to be the first a freedman and then a governor. So he was the first slave in history ever to become the governor of a Roman province. So now there's Paul sitting in, probably actually in prison, but couldn't be prison really. He was under a guard, so he could be.
Ours it
judged.
says under guard in Herod's palace.
Okay. So he was in a house arrest, but for his own safety.
Protected.
Yeah.
This is Praetorian.
Yeah. See, now let's compare Paul to the death of Jesus for a minute. So Jesus went to trial through the Roman, not the governor for sure, but just the person in charge of Jerusalem. And he said, go ahead, do what you want with him. Basically is what Pilate did. Why didn't they do that with Paul?
He's a
Roman
Roman
citizen.
Roman
citizen.
citizen.
Yeah. He's a Roman citizen. They could not do that because everything's going to break loose. Well, we're going to leave that. That's quite a wild ride tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm kind of wishing Barnabas was still alongside of Paul saying, Paul,
Me
shut up,
too.
just shut up, Paul. What? Stop talking. Just stop talking. Now, stop talking.
It's gonna be okay.
Just stop. Just stop talking.
Uh,
Paul just couldn't do it. He just can't. And he can't say nice things when there's things that need to be said. And that's how Paul was successful. And that was also Paul's demise. So you look at that with Paul. You know, we lift him up as such a, I mean, he is the reason that Christianity really started.
Right.
I mean, Jesus, obviously, but Paul was the one who carried the message. And yet he had his gifts and graces, and he had those things that he was lacking in. And could he have been as successful as he was if he had been a little more like Barnabas?
Probably not.
I don't think so. God uses each of us with our own particular gifts. And the only reason that Paul was accepted into the Christian faith was because of Barnabas.
That's right.
So God uses all of our different gifts in so many different ways. If it wasn't for Barnabas, Paul never would have been able to be the leader of the Christian church that spread Christianity. But if Paul had been more like Barnabas, the Christian message never would have survived. So, I mean, we all look at people and go, oh, I wish I could be like that. No, we're all designed to be exactly for who we are.
God needs us to be exactly who he created us to be.
Yeah.
He created us to be that way for a reason.
Mhm.
And that's how he wants to use us.
Now, see,
Without gallbladders.
yeah.
Well, thanks for reminding me.
Now, see, Patty and I had a big discussion as we were getting ready tonight. And see, I wore this matching outfit, tie-dyed and plaid.
Noticed.
Don't you want to put this sweater on? I said, no, this is my point. Because I kind of relish being a little different and on the outside.
Oh, you're good at it.
Never
Yeah.
would have guessed that.
Really, Pastor Molly, we didn't know that about you.
See, she wanted me to put this horrible matching blue sweater on. But
We love you, Dottie. You're so fun.
we're different. We are. But I mean, that's just kind of the point.
Thank you for trying, Dottie.
Yeah, she's tried for a long time.
And yet
And
she
I used
still
to be
stays
worse.
with you.
Yeah, I succeeded. a
Yeah,
little bit.
I used to be worse. And she used to be better. But we kind of met in the middle.
Funny. You're funny.
That is what, you know, we accept who we are and know that God has a particular reason for us to have whatever gifts we have or we don't have.
Mhm.
That's our
It's taking
lesson.
some of
But
us.
Molly, perhaps Dottie's with you because God wants you to listen to her.
Ah, yay.
Just perhaps.
Well, remember though, that Paul and Barnabas went separate ways
Mhm.
at the time when they could not coexist with each other anymore.
Aw. It won't get that
No,
bad.
no. So we've learned to coexist in our differences.
Funny.
Okay, well that's as far as we're getting. So we've only got, how many chapters are there? We got four more chapters to go.
Wow.
Yeah. So I do want to say we want to be finished by October 28th. I think on October 28th, I'm going to have to cancel Bible study that night. My daughter needs a babysitter and grandchildren trump everything.
There you go.
But I think well, that might be a really good time to break. So October, we'll aim to be finished by 3 more weeks.
The 21st.
The 21st of October. Well, then we'll take a break and decide what we're going to do after
We're
we
gonna be
finish
gone.
Acts.
No one.
So any questions or comments on tonight's wild theatrical story?
No, but on that note, I gotta go. Thank
Okay.
you. Love you all. Thanks for your
We'll
prayers.
keep you in prayer, Carol.
I
Good
appreciate
night,
it.
Carol.
Good night, Carol. Good luck.
Okay, so any comments or
I'm
questions?
amazed that they could get that many horses and men
I know.
rounded up and together, and it sounded like a short period of time.
Yeah, well, they had to. They had to round up the troops.
They didn't have TV.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
No
Great.
distractions.
No phones.
That would make such a great movie.
Yes, it would.
Yeah.
I mean, just the whole story would be, wow. Yeah. And that ever we ever talk about, you know, I think we did one time, what kind of guy, what kind of physical build Paul had.
Oh, you did talk about that.
Yeah, we did talk about that. What did he look like? Probably.
He looked Roman.
No, well, yeah.
Had
Okay.
the Roman nose.
It could be has a Roman nose. Was he a small guy or a big guy?
I think he was sort of a nerdy professor type looking guy.
Absolutely not. This is the guy that was the only survivor of a shipwreck because he could swim. He survived stoning. He survived all these beatings. He had to have been a pretty strong, strapping, physically fit guy for all the traveling he did and everything that happened. And a tent maker would be kind of a physical job too.
Mhm.
So he had to have been a pretty big, strong guy that stood out in the crowd.
And I think just to me, he would have had just an imposing presence anyway. That's why I think of him big, just the way he speaks.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think he was no little guy. He'd walk into a room and you'd go, oh, there's Paul. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll go and see what the tale brings now. So we are at the end of Paul's missionary trips and traveling. I mean, as far as spreading the news.
Okay.
I mean, we're just almost to the end. This is a story, and he's still going to be living out his faith, but he's not going to be traveling around starting new churches. That's all done. In a matter of years, that's it. And now he knows he's finished.
He's been writing some of the letters to churches already, but then he's going to write more.
Yeah, he's been
After
writing
he's done.
some. He'll be writing some more yet. The letters. They've been all. Remember that the Acts is the story of the Acts of the Apostles. So it starts at the beginning of the church and goes through the end of Paul. And the letters and the rest of the New Testament are the things that are happening during this time. So this is the history of the whole section of the whole New Testament times, except for the Revelation, which would be written after Paul. But the rest of it is all written probably during this time.
While he was in jail, he had time to write letters.
Yeah, when he was in jail, he had time of house arrest is really what he was, not in jail.
Oh.
So, okay. Well, what concerns? Well, I'll turn us off then now. All right, off we go.